The phone rang at exactly 9:37 on a Tuesday morning. I stared at the unknown number for several seconds before answering. My mother's voice, shaky and unfamiliar after 8 years of silence, whispered through the speaker about family and needing to reunite. I remembered her last words to me when I was 16. "You are no longer my daughter." Now she was calling, saying they needed somewhere to stay. Something had changed, but what could possibly make them reach out after all this time? Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button if you have ever felt betrayed by your own family, and do not forget to subscribe, because you will want to see how I handled their shocking request. Now let me take you back to where this all began. Growing up as a twin should have been magical. Stephanie and I came into this world together, but we could not have been more different. She was the golden child, the one who sparkled in every room she entered. With her bright blonde hair, infectious laugh, and natural charisma, she drew people like a magnet. Our parents, Robert and Linda, practically glowed whenever she smiled. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the bookworm who preferred libraries to parties, the daughter who earned straight A's, but rarely received the praise that Stephanie got for simply existing. Despite the obvious favoritism, I adored my twin sister. We shared everything in those early years. Late-night conversations under blankets, secret languages only we understood, dreams of our future adventures. I was her protector, always covering for her when she forgot homework or broke something valuable. When she cried, I cried. When she laughed, my heart soared. I genuinely believed that we would be best friends forever, that nothing could ever come between us. But everything started changing during our sophomore year. Stephanie began dating Tyler Matthews, the kind of guy who wore leather jackets and had a permanent smirk that made teachers nervous. He drove a beat-up motorcycle and had already been suspended twice for fighting. I tried warning Stephanie about him, but she just laughed and called me jealous. She started spending every free moment with Tyler, sneaking out at night and lying to our parents about study groups that did not exist. I found myself covering for her more and more. When Mom asked where Stephanie was, I would make up elaborate stories about cheerleading practice or volunteering at the library. When Dad wondered why her grades were slipping, I helped her with assignments, and sometimes even wrote her essays. I told myself I was being a good sister, but deep down something felt wrong. Stephanie never thanked me. Instead, she seemed to expect my help as her due, as if protecting her reputation was simply my job. The first real crack in our relationship came on a cold February morning. I woke up early to use the bathroom and heard retching sounds coming from Stephanie's room. When I knocked, she whispered for me to go away, but I could hear her crying. I found her sitting on her bathroom floor, pale and shaking, with a pregnancy test in her trembling hands. 2 pink lines stared back at us like a death sentence. "Veronica, you cannot tell anyone," she begged, grabbing my arm so tightly it left marks. "I will figure this out. I just need time to think." I promised to keep her secret, even though every instinct told me she needed help from adults who actually knew what to do. Over the next 2 weeks, I gave her my babysitting money so she could see a doctor. I covered for her morning sickness, telling Mom she had the flu. I researched her options and printed out information about different choices she could make. But instead of gratitude, I got resentment. When the nausea made her cranky, she snapped at me for breathing too loudly. When I suggested she tell our parents, she accused me of wanting to ruin her life. When Tyler started avoiding her calls, she blamed me for giving her bad advice. Nothing I did was right, and the sister I had loved and protected my entire life was disappearing before my eyes. The inevitable discovery came 3 weeks later when Mom found Stephanie throwing up for the 4th day in a row and demanded a doctor's visit. The truth came out in our family living room on a Sunday afternoon that I will never forget. But instead of taking responsibility, Stephanie pointed her finger directly at me. Through her tears, she told our parents that I had known for weeks and had not said anything. She claimed I had encouraged her to keep the secret and had even helped her hide it from them. I sat there in stunned silence as my parents' faces transformed from shock to fury, but their anger was not directed at Stephanie. It was aimed squarely at me. "How could you let this happen?" Dad shouted. "You are supposed to look out for your sister." Mom's disappointed stare cut deeper than any words could have. In that moment, I realized that no matter what I said, they had already decided who was the victim and who was to blame. The foundation of my world started crumbling beneath my feet. What happened next turned my life into a waking nightmare that lasted for months. My parents made the executive decision that Stephanie would have the baby, and that Tyler would marry her, as if an unwanted pregnancy could be solved with an unwanted marriage. Tyler, who had been avoiding Stephanie's calls for weeks, suddenly became a regular fixture in our house, and I quickly learned that he was even worse than I had originally thought. Overnight, I became Stephanie's personal servant. Since she was now delicate and needed rest, all of her responsibilities fell to me. I had to wake up an hour earlier every morning to prepare her breakfast and pack her lunch. I drove her to doctor's appointments because she claimed the smell of the car made her sick when anyone else was driving. I did her laundry, cleaned her room, and even completed her homework because stress was bad for the baby. School became impossible to focus on. I was exhausted from staying up late doing 2 people's worth of assignments, and I had to leave early most days to pick up Stephanie from whatever activity she had decided she was too tired to finish. My grades, which had always been my source of pride, started slipping. My few friends began avoiding me because I was never available to hang out anymore. The only person who seemed to notice my struggle was Mrs. Jessica Williams, my English teacher, who started staying after school to help me catch up. But the worst part was Tyler's presence in our house. He treated our home like his personal kingdom, putting his feet up on Mom's coffee table, eating our food without asking, and speaking to me like I was hired help, rather than Stephanie's sister. He made crude jokes about my appearance, and constantly referred to me as the problem sister whenever I was within earshot. When I told Stephanie about his behavior, she accused me of being jealous that she had a boyfriend who loved her. The situation escalated when my parents decided that Stephanie needed the larger bedroom to prepare for the baby. My room, which I had decorated with years of birthday money and babysitting earnings, was stripped bare in a single afternoon. I was moved to the basement, which was damp cold and had a ceiling so low I had to duck to avoid hitting my head on the pipes. When I protested, Dad told me that sacrifices had to be made for family, and Mom added that I should be grateful to have a roof over my head after betraying their trust. Tyler's harassment intensified once I was isolated in the basement. He started finding excuses to come downstairs when no one else was around, standing too close when he talked to me, making comments about my body that made my skin crawl. When he started accidentally brushing against me in the narrow basement stairway, I knew I had to tell someone. But when I brought it up to my parents, they dismissed my concerns as attention-seeking behavior. Stephanie actually laughed and told me I was being dramatic, that Tyler was just being friendly. The breaking point came on a rainy evening in late March. I was in my basement room doing homework when Tyler came downstairs claiming he was looking for tools. But instead of going to Dad's workbench, he sat on my bed and started talking about how mature I seemed compared to Stephanie. When he reached over and put his hand on my knee, I jumped up and told him to leave. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me back down, saying that maybe I needed to learn what I was missing. I screamed as loudly as I could, and the whole family came running downstairs. But instead of seeing Tyler as the predator he was, they saw what he and Stephanie wanted them to see. Tyler immediately flipped the script, claiming that I had been flirting with him for weeks and had just tried to kiss him. Stephanie sobbed that she could not believe her own sister would try to steal her boyfriend. My parents looked at me with disgust and disappointment that cut deeper than any physical pain could have. "We have tried to be patient with you," Mom said, her voice colder than I had ever heard it. "But this jealousy and attention-seeking behavior has gone too far. You are disrupting this family at a time when we need to come together." Dad nodded grimly and delivered the words that would change my life forever. You need to find somewhere else to live. We cannot have this kind of toxicity around the baby. And just like that, at 16 years old, I became homeless. The family I had loved and sacrificed for threw me away like garbage, choosing to believe lies over protecting their own daughter. I had 24 hours to pack my belongings and figure out where to go. As I stuffed my few possessions into a backpack that night, I could hear Stephanie and Tyler laughing upstairs, probably celebrating their victory. I had never felt so alone in my entire life. Walking out of that house with nothing but a backpack and $200 felt like stepping into an alternate universe. I had no plan, no family, and no real understanding of how the world worked when you were completely on your own. For the first 2 nights, I slept in my car in the school parking lot, washing my face in the gas station bathroom, and hoping no one would notice that I was wearing the same clothes multiple days in a row. Mrs. Williams noticed, of course. Teachers always notice more than we think they do. When she kept me after class on my 3rd day of homelessness and gently asked if everything was okay at home, I broke down completely. Through my tears, I told her everything that had happened. Without hesitation, she offered me her guest room until I could figure out a more permanent solution. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe someone actually cared about what happened to me. Living with Mrs. Williams was a revelation. Her house was quiet and peaceful, filled with books and the smell of chamomile tea. She treated me like a human being deserving of respect and kindness, concepts that had become foreign to me. She helped me enroll in online classes to complete my GED since my regular school attendance had become so sporadic. Most importantly, she never once made me feel like a burden or a charity case. She simply gave me the space and support I needed to start rebuilding my life. I found a job at Murphy's Diner, a 24-hour restaurant downtown that served truckers, night shift workers, and anyone else who needed food at odd hours. The work was hard. My feet ached constantly, and the pay was barely above minimum wage, but it was mine. No one could take it away from me, and every dollar I earned represented a step toward independence. I worked the evening shift so I could do my online schoolwork during the day, and slowly, painfully, I began to construct a new version of myself. The owner of Murphy's Diner was Patricia Morgan, a 60-year-old widow who had been running the place since her husband died 10 years earlier. She was tough as nails, with silver hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, and eyes that seemed to see right through any excuse or sob story. But beneath that gruff exterior was a heart that had room for strays, and for reasons I still do not fully understand, she decided I was worth investing in. Mrs. Morgan became the closest thing to a parent I had experienced in years. She taught me practical skills like balancing a cash register, managing inventory, and dealing with difficult customers without losing my composure. But more than that, she taught me that I was capable of more than I had ever imagined. When I mentioned that I might want to go to college someday, she did not laugh or tell me to be realistic. Instead, she helped me research scholarships and encouraged me to dream bigger than I had ever dared. Applying to college felt like reaching for the moon, but Mrs. Morgan insisted that I had nothing to lose by trying. Together, we filled out scholarship applications, wrote essay after essay, and submitted my GED scores to state universities across the region. When the acceptance letter came from State University, along with a partial scholarship, I cried in the diner's break room for 20 minutes. Mrs. Morgan just handed me a tissue and said, "I told you so." College was a whole new world of possibilities. I chose business management as my major, figuring that learning how to run organizations efficiently might help me build the kind of stable life I had always wanted. My part-time job at a local restaurant helped cover what the scholarship did not, and I threw myself into my studies with the intensity of someone who knew exactly how much this opportunity was worth. During my sophomore year, I met Marcus Thompson in an accounting class, where we were randomly assigned as study partners. Marcus was the kind of person who made friendship feel effortless. He was kind without being weak, ambitious, without being ruthless and funny in a way that never came at someone else's expense. When he asked me out for coffee after our final exam, I said yes, without overthinking it for the first time in my life. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally, built on mutual respect and genuine compatibility. Marcus never pressured me to talk about my family situation, but when I finally felt ready to share my story, he listened without judgment, and never once suggested that I should try to reconcile with people who had treated me so badly. He understood that sometimes family is not about blood, but about choosing to love and support each other through all of life's challenges. I graduated summa cum laude, with a degree in business management, and multiple job offers from companies that recruited directly from our program. I chose a position with a marketing firm in the city, starting as a junior account coordinator with room for advancement. Marcus and I moved in together after graduation, splitting time between our careers and building the kind of partnership I had never seen modeled in my childhood home. 4 years later, Marcus proposed during a weekend camping trip, getting down on one knee beside a mountain lake that reflected the sunset like liquid gold. Our wedding was small but perfect, attended by Mrs. Morgan, Mrs. Williams, my closest friends from college, and Marcus's wonderfully normal family who had welcomed me like their own daughter from the very beginning. I had built a life that was entirely my own, filled with people who chose to love me, and whom I chose to love in return. 8 years had passed since I walked out of my childhood home, and I had successfully built a life that felt secure, purposeful, and genuinely happy. Marcus and I owned a cozy 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools, even though we had not yet decided whether children were in our future. I had been promoted to senior account manager at my marketing firm, managing a team of 6 people and working with clients whose budgets were larger than my entire family's annual income had been growing up. The phone call that shattered my peaceful Tuesday morning came from a number I did not recognize, but the voice was unmistakably my mother's. 8 years of silence, and she was calling as if we had spoken just yesterday. Her tone was shaky, uncertain, completely different from the cold authority I remembered from my teenage years. "Veronica, honey, it's Mom," she said, as if I might have forgotten what she sounded like. "I know it has been a while since we talked, but I was hoping we could put the past behind us. Family is so important, and we have been thinking about you a lot lately." The irony was not lost on me. After years of insisting I was not part of their family, they were suddenly concerned about family bonds. I listened as she explained that life had not been easy for them. Tyler had left Stephanie when their second child was 2 years old, claiming he needed to find himself, and disappearing without paying a dime of child support. Stephanie was now a single mother of 2, struggling to make ends meet while working retail jobs that barely covered her expenses. My father had been laid off from his construction job 6 months earlier, and at 58 he was having trouble finding new employment. They had burned through their savings, fallen behind on their mortgage, and were facing foreclosure. Mom's voice cracked as she painted a picture of hardship and desperation, and I found myself feeling something I had not expected, a twinge of sympathy. But then came the real reason for her call. "We were wondering if we could come stay with you for a while, just until we get back on our feet. I know you have done well for yourself, and we thought maybe you could help family during this difficult time. Stephanie has really grown up, Veronica. She realizes she made mistakes when she was young, and she wants to make things right with you." The request hung in the air like a weight. They wanted to move into my home, the sanctuary I had built after they destroyed my sense of safety and belonging. They wanted to benefit from the success I had achieved despite their abandonment. The audacity was breathtaking, but what struck me most was how little they seemed to understand about what they had done to me. I took a deep breath and gave them my answer with the same calm professionalism I used in difficult client meetings. "I appreciate you reaching out, Mom, but I will not be able to have you stay in my home. What happened when I was 16 caused damage that has never been addressed or acknowledged. However, I am willing to help financially on a limited basis." The shift in her tone was immediate and dramatic. The sweet, desperate mother disappeared, replaced by the cold, manipulative woman I remembered. "I cannot believe how selfish you have become," she snapped. "We are your family, Veronica. We raised you. We fed you. We gave you everything. And now when we need help, you turn your back on us just like you turned your back on your sister when she needed you most." I ended the call without responding to her accusations, but I knew it would not be the last I heard from them. Sure enough, Stephanie called 3 hours later, her voice thick with tears and what sounded like genuine remorse. She told me about her struggles as a single mother, about working 2 jobs and still not being able to afford decent childcare. She apologized for what had happened when we were teenagers, claiming she had been scared and immature and had made terrible choices that she regretted every day. "I know I do not deserve your help," Stephanie said, and for a moment she sounded like the sister I had once loved. "But my kids are innocent in all this. They need stability, and I do not know where else to turn. Please, Veronica, I will do anything to make things right between us." It was masterfully done, hitting every emotional button that might have worked on the 16-year-old girl who had once sacrificed everything for her sister's well-being. But I was not that girl anymore. I had learned hard lessons about the difference between helping someone and enabling them, between forgiveness and foolishness. "I can help you with a security deposit and 3 months of rent on an apartment," I told her. "I can also provide information about assistance programs and job training opportunities. But you cannot move in with me, Stephanie. That boundary is not negotiable." Her response revealed that 16-year-old Stephanie was still very much alive beneath the desperate single mother facade. "You are just like Tyler," she spat. "Selfish and cruel. I hope you are happy living your perfect little life while your family suffers." As I hung up the phone, I felt something unexpected wash over me. Not guilt or regret, but relief. For the first time in my adult life, I had been tested by my family's manipulation and had passed. I had offered reasonable help while maintaining my boundaries, and their reaction had confirmed that I was making the right choice. The guilt came later, of course. It crept in during quiet moments, whispering that maybe I was being too harsh, that people could change, that family was supposed to forgive and forget. I talked through these feelings with Marcus, with Mrs. Morgan, who had become like a mother to me, and with the therapist I had started seeing to process the complex emotions that my family's reappearance had stirred up. Each conversation helped me understand that protecting myself was not the same as punishing them. I had every right to create boundaries that preserved my peace and security. The family that had thrown me away as a teenager did not automatically deserve access to the woman I had become through my own hard work and determination. The real healing came when I realized that their opinion of me no longer mattered. I had spent years building a life filled with people who valued and respected me, who supported my dreams and celebrated my successes. I had created the kind of family I had always wanted, one based on choice, rather than obligation, on love, rather than control. 6 months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that my parents and Stephanie had moved in with my father's brother in another state. I felt neither satisfaction nor sadness at this news, just a quiet acknowledgement that their story was continuing without me exactly as it should be. Sometimes the family you create is stronger than the one you were born into, and that is not something to feel guilty about. It is something to celebrate. The people who choose to love you despite knowing all your flaws, who support your growth instead of demanding your sacrifice, who build you up instead of tearing you down, those are the people who deserve your loyalty and devotion. I learned that forgiveness does not require forgetting, and that loving someone does not mean accepting their harmful behavior. I learned that setting boundaries is not selfish but necessary, and that protecting your peace is not cruel but wise. Most importantly, I learned that you do not owe anyone access to the life you have built, no matter how much DNA you share with them. My story is not unique. There are countless people who have had to choose between family loyalty and personal well-being, who have had to build new lives from the ashes of old betrayals. If you are one of those people, please know that you are not alone, and you are not wrong to prioritize your own healing and happiness. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who tried to manipulate you back into toxic situations? I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Do not forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming family trauma and building the life you deserve. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is love yourself enough to walk away. Until next time, keep choosing your own happiness and surrounding yourself with people who truly see your worth.